In December 1804, within the Grand Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris, a historic event took place. Napoleon Bonaparte crowned himself Emperor of the French. This act was unprecedented, symbolizing not only his ambition but also his refusal to let anyone, even the Pope, have authority over him. Napoleon's rise to power was nothing short of extraordinary. Born into a poor Corsican noble family, he ascended from obscurity to become a military dictator and then emperor in just over a decade. His journey was propelled by the turbulent events of the French Revolution and the wars that followed, which created the perfect stage for his ambition and skill. Napoleon's reign was dominated by war, a conflict unlike anything Europe had ever seen. It was a time of chaos, with millions of lives lost and the continent thrown into turmoil. His ambitions brought him into constant conflict with other European powers. By 1805, only 8 months after his coronation, France and its ally Spain were locked in war with Britain. Napoleon had assembled a massive army of 180,000 soldiers along the French coastline, preparing for an invasion of Britain. However, the powerful British Royal Navy, which controlled the seas, made such an invasion impossible. Similarly, Britain could not match Napoleon's strength on land. Faced with this stalemate, British Prime Minister William Pitt sought to counter Napoleon's power through alliances. Using diplomacy and financial incentives, Pitt worked to create a coalition of European powers against France. Britain and France were longtime rivals, both in Europe and overseas. Pitt believed Napoleon's conquests had upset the balance of power in Europe, making France dangerously dominant. He argued that defeating Napoleon was necessary to restore stability and ensure lasting peace. "Roll up that map of Europe, it will not be wanted these 10 years, Pitt reportedly said after hearing of Napoleon's triumphs. Pitt's efforts found support among European monarchs who despised Napoleon. To them, he represented the disruptive forces of the French Revolution and a threat to traditional monarchies. Austria, in particular, harbored deep grievances. French victories had steadily reduced Austria's influence in Germany and Italy, and Napoleon's decision to crown himself King of Italy in May 1804 was the final insult. Austria, Russia, Sweden, and Naples joined Britain in forming the Third Coalition. Together, they devised an ambitious strategy involving coordinated offensives to defeat Napoleon. The main attack was to be led by a combined Austro-Russian army advancing into France. However, Napoleon, ever the strategist, learned of their plans and acted swiftly. His newly reorganized army, known as La Grande Armée, was a formidable force, consisting of highly trained and motivated soldiers. Napoleon introduced the corps system, which divided his army into smaller, self-sufficient units. Each corps had its own infantry, cavalry, artillery, and support units, allowing it to operate independently for short periods. This system enabled Napoleon to move his army faster and more flexibly, often outmaneuvering his enemies. Napoleon's first target was the Austrian army under General Mack, which had advanced prematurely into Bavaria, a French ally. Mack's forces were isolated, and Napoleon saw an opportunity to strike. He ordered his cavalry commander, Marshal Murat, to make deceptive attacks through the Black Forest. Meanwhile, the rest of the French army moved quickly to encircle Mack's forces from the north. Napoleon's speed and strategy caught the Austrians off guard. By the time Mack realized the danger, it was too late. Napoleon's forces crossed the Danube River behind the Austrian army, cutting off their retreat. On October 19, 1805, after a series of poorly coordinated Austrian counterattacks, Mack was forced to surrender at Ulm. Nearly 60,000 Austrian soldiers were taken prisoner, delivering a devastating blow to the Third Coalition. Napoleon's victory at Ulm showcased his ability to outthink and outmaneuver his enemies, solidifying his reputation as a military genius. The Russian army, led by the cautious and experienced General Mikhail Kutuzov, was still marching to support the Austrians. However, after learning of Mack's surrender, Kutuzov realized he could not face Napoleon alone. He ordered a retreat, but Napoleon pursued relentlessly. The French occupied Vienna on November 12, further demoralizing the Allies. Kutuzov retreated to Olmütz, modern-day Czech Republic, where he was joined by reinforcements and the Russian Emperor Alexander I, as well as Austrian Emperor Francis I. Napoleon, however, was determined to force a decisive battle before winter set in. The stage was set for the Battle of Austerlitz, also known as the Battle of the Three Emperors. On December 2, 1805, exactly 1 year after Napoleon's coronation, the French and Allied armies faced each other on a battlefield near the town of Austerlitz. The Allies, confident in their superior position, held the high ground of the Pratzen Heights. Napoleon, however, had a carefully crafted plan. He deliberately weakened his right flank, hoping to lure the Allies into a large-scale attack. When they took the bait, Napoleon planned to counterattack and seize the Pratzen Heights, splitting the Allied army in two. The battle began at 7 a.m. as Austrian troops attacked the French right flank. The French forces fought valiantly but gradually retreated, creating the illusion of weakness. The Allies, delayed by confusion and the morning mist, launched their main attack later than planned. Around 9 a.m., Marshal Davout's corps arrived after a grueling 70-mile march in 2 days, reinforcing the French right wing just in time. Meanwhile, Napoleon launched his counterattack on the Pratzen Heights. 2 French divisions, hidden by the mist, suddenly advanced, catching the Allies off guard. Fierce fighting ensued, with both sides resorting to bayonet charges when they ran out of ammunition. By 11 a.m., the French had secured the heights, driving a wedge through the Allied center. In the north, a massive cavalry battle unfolded, while in the south, the French encircled the Allied left wing, cutting off their retreat. The battle reached its climax when Russian Imperial Guard cavalry launched a desperate attack to reclaim the Pratzen Heights. Napoleon responded by deploying his own Guard cavalry. The elite forces clashed in a brutal melee, but the French emerged victorious. By 2 p.m., the Allied army was in disarray. Many soldiers fled across frozen ponds, which French artillery targeted with cannon fire. Though Napoleon exaggerated the number of soldiers who drowned, his victory was undeniable. The Battle of Austerlitz was a masterpiece of strategy and deception. Napoleon's army captured over 10,000 prisoners and 45 enemy standards. The Allies suffered heavy casualties, and the Third Coalition was effectively broken. Austria was forced to sign a humiliating peace treaty, ceding territory and paying a massive indemnity. Russia retreated, and Europe's balance of power shifted in Napoleon's favor. However, news of a catastrophic naval defeat at the Battle of Trafalgar tempered Napoleon's triumph. British Admiral Lord Nelson had achieved a decisive victory, ensuring British naval dominance for the next century. The war between Britain and France continued, symbolizing the struggle between 2 great powers, the whale and the elephant, each dominant in its own domain. Napoleon's victory at Austerlitz marked the peak of his military career. It demonstrated his ability to predict his enemies' movements, exploit their weaknesses, and inspire his troops to achieve the impossible. But as history would later show, even Napoleon's genius had its limits, and his insatiable ambition would eventually lead to his downfall.